Okay, so all the home churches that I've ever been to were bitter, angry people who, at church who thought very high and mighty of themselves and thought they could do church better.
Yep.
Is that a majority of them? Is that's my experience with basically everyone that we ended up in temporarily while everyone figured out where to all go to church again.
Right.
And it was like, well, screw those people and crap.
Yeah.
Well, those people aren't good people that we went to church with before, and we can do it better, and we're the best. And everything that we think about the Bible is the correct way to think about it, and everyone else is stupid, and we're going to do it our way. So that's my experience with it. So is that most of it?
Most of it. I think that's been a lot of it for a long time, especially within the Bible Belt.
Okay.
And so because in the Bible Belt, most house churches, if I'm being honest, most house churches that I have known generally start because of church hurt.
Okay.
Right? Or offenses, those kind of things. Or like you said, they're angry that the church didn't do the things the way they wanted them to do it.
Yes.
And so we're going to start our own church here in the house that's going to do it better.
Yeah.
And so, for a long time, for years and years, that was my experience with house churches.
And then everyone for like 6 months is like, this is the best, and we're so good at this, and we did everything better, and then people stop coming, and then no one has a church anymore.
Right, and then it all falls apart.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, or another offense happens.
Everyone's like, look, we made pancakes every morning, and we sit there with pancakes and Starbucks, and we do church the best.
Yeah, a lot of my experience has been that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, what's funny is, so I even had someone who's a mentor of mine, and he started saying, Joseph, like, we're starting up a network of house churches in our area. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Like, that's,
what do you mean a network of house churches?
Like, don't do that. Like, honestly, that was my thought. Like, that's a bad idea. And then I went out to a network of churches out west, a network of house churches, visited them out west, and I was like, wow, this is completely different than anything I've ever seen.
Really?
These people were not angry. They were not mad. They were not disappointed. They were not prideful. They were not, none of that. And so the individuals that had started the house church were like, they just believed in house churches. And they started the house church, and then they started leading people to Christ.
I didn't know there was honestly, before we started this, I didn't know there was a theological or whatever philosophical reason to think that home churches were actually a better thing than going to a real church.
Yeah, there are. And so like these individuals, like that's just really what they thought. Like, we're going to do house church. Like, we're not going to throw our resources into bigger buildings. Yeah. We're going to be intentional about the mission of God. We're going to make disciples. And we're going to grow our house church through leading people to know Christ. And that's what they did. And like in a matter of like a couple.
And also we're better than everyone. So,
well, but there really wasn't that like aura of like arrogance or anything. Like, it really wasn't that way at all. And they just kept multiplying house churches. And in the next thing you knew, they had like a network of house churches with like 200 plus people in it. And over like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 different house churches.
I feel like it's less intimidating to say, hey, you want to come to my house and listen to us do church, instead of, hey, you want to come to our church with hundreds of people?
Right. No, agreed. Yeah. And that's actually, what's interesting is like, you've probably been familiar with house, like home groups, that's what they usually were called, like home groups or cell groups, Bible studies that meet in homes. Yeah. And that was actually a large premise for that, was like, people feel more comfortable going to someone's home, invite them to your home, get them connected into your home group, and then you can bring them to the big church, on Sunday mornings. And so, whereas like this is like kind of cutting out that next jump, and like house church is the church, like home group is the thing. Right. And so anyways, and so that started the progression of changing my perspective on house churches to actually see one that was healthy, functioning in a healthy manner. And the individual that was kind of like leading it, if you were, or one of the individuals leading it, like, to be honest with you, like really good teacher, pretty charismatic, could have been pastoring like a much larger church. Okay. But this was just his conviction of like, no, this is better. Right. And
so they do think they're better.
They do think they think that doing house church is probably a more fiscally responsible thing to do. Yeah. One. Yeah. Then number two, it also forces you to be intentional, to reach out to people, invite your neighbors, invite those that are not in church to come to the church, because that's how you grow. Okay. And that's like their mindset behind it. And then number three, like it's easier to disciple people in these smaller churches. Okay. So that was like that formed their philosophical premise for house church. And it was actually really cool and refreshing to be out there with them for that time.
See, that actually sounds nice.
Yeah. No, it was. It was really cool.
That sounds way better.
And then they would actually get together once a quarter, and some like all the house churches, and they like rent out a space for like a weekend, and they'd do like a conference or a seminar, one That's quarter, cool. And then like another quarter they'd get together like at a one time they like rented out this like barn space for the weekend and just made like a family weekend out of it. So like the families would come out there, they have games for the kids, and they were doing axe throwing and everything else, and and just like it was just fun. Like there wasn't like a conference seminar type thing.
You're blowing my mind.
Yeah. So it was actually really cool. So anyway,
I'm serious.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So that actually started forming my thoughts it started reshaping my thoughts of what house church, home church could be. And if I'm being honest, even what church could be. So, so I've got some thoughts about why I think house church actually is a viable model going forward in the United States, in the specific culture that we're in, which is a post-Christian culture, that I don't think was probably viable for house churches even 25, 30 years ago.
Well, all the ones around here are bitter.
I don't know if all of them, because I haven't been to
all of them. I've been to all of them. And they're all bitter.
There's a lot that are, man. It's really is
disgusting.
Sad. It is. It is.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Of course I don't like it.
Yeah, of course you don't. No.
It's just a bunch of angry, prideful, bitter jerks.
Yeah. Or even if they're not bitter, they just like to have this like spiritual superiority complex.
Yes.
Like they're more spiritual, right? That kind of thing. So yes, in our area, especially again in the Bible Belt, I think that has traditionally been the case. But again, I'll talk about it here in a little bit. Or maybe I can talk about it now. I don't know, but like I really think that there's a change coming.
Why?
Because a few things. Number one, I think eventually the church is going to lose their 501c3 status.
Okay.
And so they're no longer going to be a nonprofit. And so therefore individuals will not be able to give
not with our boy back in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo! Yeah. Anyways, that's a whole nother episode. We pretty much already done, I think.
Yeah, we did it.
So yeah, go back and look at our archives about that thing. So anyway, but I do think eventually the church will probably lose its 501c3, which means that people will not be giving as large amounts of money to the church as they once were before. Okay. Now, I do think a lot of people are giving their tithes and that kind of stuff to the church, regardless of the tax breaks. I do think there's a lot of people that do that. It's the really large gifts that are given by individuals that need the tax breaks.
Oh.
Those will no longer be going to the church because they won't get the tax break for it. So it'll have to go to other nonprofits. And I think that's when the church is going to start to really feel a financial strain. And so therefore, like if you're a really large church.
Why do you think that's going to happen?
The 501c3 status? Yeah. Because I think the church, our culture, our country is just becoming more and more skeptical of the church as being like viable nonprofit.
Do you think that's good or bad?
I'm torn. I'm torn, and here's why I'm torn. I'm torn because it's obviously benefited the church, right? Like it benefits our church. We receive large donations every year because.
But you don't think the church as a whole does enough good with the benefits they get?
Some do and some don't. And I think that's probably the issue, right?
Right.
Like how much money is going back into the community? How much money is going to help those who are in need? I think that's a real legitimate question to be asked.
Okay, so
I think there's been so many misuse of money by really large churches that eventually it's going to catch up with all of the churches, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
But
my thing is, well, if you start pushing for home churches now, then there won't be the big organizational
downfall
church denominations to fight back against it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how would you get a bunch of home churches together to go campaign against ending the 501c3 status?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that the 501c3 status will happen first, and then that will happen, number one.
Okay.
And then number two, I think the one that I'm probably most concerned about is the hate speech laws or the potential hate speech laws. So if I, as a conservative pastor, if I can't stand up and say what I believe to be sin is without it coming across as hate speech. So if I make statements that say that if you're living in a life of, sexual promiscuity or living a life as a homosexual, practicing homosexual, if that starts to be labeled as hate speech, I think that's where conservative churches or churches that were more orthodox in their theology, I think that's going to have a large bearing on these larger churches.
Okay.
So in other words, you're going to have to either stop putting lines in the sand of where you believe, all right, this is sin and that kind of thing. You're going to either have to put a line there, possibly be charged with hate speech, or you're going to be like, okay, we're just not going to talk about it anymore. Like, we're just going to throw our hands up, not address the issue so that we can...
Why couldn't churches just file as something else and keep doing the same thing under 501c3?
Because when churches, when we're filling out 501c3 stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're actually doing it as a church.
Right. So file as something else.
Right. But then you're still gathering
So?
Yeah, but okay, so for example, if you filed as something else, you would have to show proof that you're doing that something else.
So if they got rid of 501c3 church status where churches would have to start doing those things that they're supposed to be doing.
I think that's
if they filed as something else.
I was actually going to say that earlier. I think there's one of the ways around it is for there to be individuals in that church starting another nonprofit.
Right.
Funneling money to that, which
is
funds legal. Completely, which funds the building usage, right?
And then you have to do nonprofit good stuff
and
as
then
a
you
church.
have to do nonprofit good stuff.
Wow, let's end the 501c3. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, anyways, I think what'll end up happening is because of 501c3 status is being lost, because of potential hate speech laws, I think it will lead to a necessity of home churches or micro churches.
Okay. I don't think you should worry about the hate speech thing either.
Yeah.
I think that stuff's over.
I'm hopeful. I'm definitely more hopeful now than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see long term. And I do believe, to be honest, I think that a lot of this will also cause the end of mega churches.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that at all.
Right.
And I'm not listen, if you go to a mega church, you attend a mega church, I'm not knocking that.
We can pull down Osteen's statue together.
I wouldn't mind doing that. But I think that's, I do think that eventually, these things are going to catch up with the church. There won't be the money influx that there has been historically. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have to pivot to something different. I'm just convinced of it.
But wouldn't if they got rid of 501c3 for churches, wouldn't that be the same thing as getting rid of it for mosques and Hindu temples and synagogues? And well, you'd have all those people on your side too.
Well, I don't know, man. I'm just
because it would.
Yeah, I'm just.
They couldn't do it for just one religion, right? Because they all.
I think what the concern would be is because right, like there's already been FBI and IRS investigations into larger churches, and their financial mismanagements, right. What I am concerned of is that they will continue to push that, or if that gets continued to push, right? If that continues to get pushed, where we're going to go after churches and eventually start tearing them down, to be honest with you. And because denominations are losing out right now, right? Denominations are getting smaller and smaller and smaller every year. And so their power, their influence is waning. And so I think you can see denominations start crumbling because of this. There's just a lot of stuff that I think could happen. And to be honest with you, where they would begin to not protect churches while protecting other religions.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
But that kind of gets back to that whole critical theory of the divide of the oppressor and the oppressed and us and them, and Christians being the oppressors, and we're going to really go after them while protecting those.
Okay, well, I think the only going after Christians and not all religions is going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although
all of this stuff is just a simple Supreme Court decision.
Yeah.
But you've got the Supreme Court on your side for like 30 years at this point.
For a while.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my notes, I actually put down that I think that we're going to start to see because Christianity continues to decline at a pretty sharp number.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think in 25 years, it's going to be a real concern. Okay. And because it not only just like you can keep the 501c3 things there, the financial numbers are not there like they used to be.
Okay.
Just in general. And so, and I think that,
except for you.
So what do you mean except for me?
For your church.
For our church?
Yeah.
We're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
We're blessed.
Hashtag.
But we're also a small little church too.
True.
The thing that helps with that, can I be honest with our church, like we don't have any debt. None.
Yeah.
So like we don't have a building.
Wait, how do churches get debt? By buying buildings? Mm-hmm. Is that the main
buying
thing?
Property and building buildings.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where the major debt comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like,
why can't you rent until you have enough money and then buy a building?
Well, because let's say you're an existing church.
Yeah.
And you know that you need a larger sanctuary. Then you're going to either move from where you're at, or there's like, man, I'm not lying, dude. It's amazing to me that people I'm talking about spending millions and millions of dollars for a new church.
Yeah.
Or for a new sanctuary. That's, I don't know. That's like, and we're even at the place.
Gotta have smoke and lasers.
Yeah, gotta have the lasers, man. Blinding you. And so like we're even at the place at our church of going, all right, we're hitting like max capacity in our mm-hmm. not in our sanctuary area as much, although that's coming, but more of the like where we fellowship together, where we have our Wednesday night meals, that kind of stuff. When we have our meals after church, like we're hitting max capacity there. And so
we can just meet at your house.
That's not helping any. That's not going to help any. And so like we've got to find a way to be able to create space for still being to meet together. But one of the things I've done is I kind of put my own line in the sand of being like, well, we're not going to build a new sanctuary. We will go to multiple services. We're not building a new sanctuary.
Okay.
But this is kind of where my long-term thing is coming in. Like actually like my dream, like long-term dream is I would love to be able to raise up individuals in our church to go plant house churches or micro churches. So churches that meet like in businesses or whatever. So plant house churches. And so they could plant house churches. We don't have to build a new sanctuary, right? You have to spend the money on that. We can invest in individuals that are leading house churches. And then we can still all come together to do all the community outreach stuff we do, to do all the international missions work we do, to be even for like, Wednesday nights, if we have a large enough space, we could gather together and still eat together, have fellowship together. Our youth can do things together, like children's program. All of that can still be there without having to spend the millions and millions of dollars it would take to, whole new building and property, or just even building a whole new sanctuary, which costs a whole lot more money than building like a really simple metal multi-purpose building,
one of those
just kind of generic buildings that are just there, that we can meet in and have large enough space and classrooms, that kind of stuff.
Why don't you just make that a new sanctuary?
Yeah, and some people do that.
Just hang a big old cross at the front from the metal,
and some people that's what some people do, right?
Just tie some sticks together and put it up there.
Yeah, but like I'm also like, for me, like, all right, so our church is not like huge, right? At all. Yeah. I mean, we have, I think I was looking at the roster the other day, like we have like 100 and I think it's like about 100, like right about 120 adults that are actively involved in our church, right? So you add those and the kids, but like, as we continue to grow, like my heart is to invest in people, to raise up individuals that have a calling to shepherd and be pastors and be teachers.
Okay.
Then I want to make space and make room for them to be able to fulfill and live out their calling. And if we just build a massive sanctuary and it's still, kind of pastor centric, if you were, on this one person, me, like being the primary teacher, I think that actually is prohibitive of individuals growing in the calling of God on their lives.
Oh, okay.
I want to see people released to be able to teach.
So build a bunch of home churches.
So, you don't have to build them.
Or tell people to go home.
That's right. Tell them to go home.
Do church there.
Right, do church there.
Get out of here. We don't want you here. Go home.
Well, we'll do it in a much nicer way.
You guys go to that church?
We'll do it in a much nicer way than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was pretty nice.
Well, yeah.
I didn't say any explicitives.
No, you did not.
All
yes. Right. So, but yeah, cast a vision for house churches and why they can be so powerful. And because I really believe they can, but I also think that what happens in house churches, especially here in the Bible Belt, when we see these like angry house churches and they collapse within 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
I think the issue is like, regardless if you're in an institutional church, or a house church, like you're still dealing with people.
Yeah.
There's still opportunities for offense. There's still opportunities for disappointment.
Sally always forgets the donuts. We never forget the donuts.
Right. Bingo.
Screw this church.
I want to be appreciated.
Yeah.
And so I think all of those things come into play. And like, it's easier if you're in a home church and you're just like, you know what? Forget this. They're no better than the church we left.
Right.
I'm just going to find another established church.
Also, I hate their dog.
And that can be an issue. I'm allergic to cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, those are real things too. So, so anyway, I think that I really genuinely think there's a place for home churches, for micro churches to thrive and do well. And I think it's probably coming. I don't know if we're quite, especially in the Bible Belt here.
Yeah.
We may not quite be there yet, but I do think it's coming. And my hope is to prepare our church to where we can engage into that.